welcome. Hi, Jenny, Mark. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
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 I'm probably butchering your name, sorry. Hello, Kelly. Welcome. Hello. Okay, so we have more people coming in. Let's see. Hello, Alden. Hello, Egel. Probably butchering the name. I'm sorry. Egla. Okay, I'll try my best. Okay, people still coming in. Welcome, Roxane. Just to give you a couple, just an idea, we'll just wait for a couple of minutes till everyone joins before we actually start the salon. Welcome, Jacqueline. Okay, there's still people coming in. Sorry, Paul, did you say something?
No, I was waving to my colleague, Jacqueline.
Oh, okay.
Hello, Jacqueline.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
The sun has just come out in Calgary, and I've tried to get the blinds where they're blocked, but there's a weird glare, but it's from really
No, it's lovely. No, it's just
full sunlight. Thank
you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
That's great. Where do you guys meet?
Oh, we both teach at Pepperdine.
Okay.
I thought you looked familiar. All right.
Yeah, we know you. We're fans.
I'm glad that I'm not the only fan here of Zena's work. Hi, Andy. Welcome. So good to see you. Okay, so let's see. I usually take these 5 minutes of people just coming in before starting the actual salon. So in the meantime, while people come in, if you want to tell us a little bit about your name and where are you dialing from, that would be great. So maybe Jen and Mark, you guys can start.
Hi, Jenny and Mark. We're calling in from Seattle, Washington at the moment.
Great, thank you. Wants to go next?
You better appoint us. You should tell us.
Okay, but that's okay. Go, Paul.
Okay, I'm at Pepperdine in Malibu, California, and I'm gearing up to teaching great books. Jacqueline and I both teach in the Great Books Colloquium, and I took an AI seminar a couple of months ago, and I'm just trying to figure out, my way through it.
Aren't we all? Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Go, Kelly.
Okay, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm calling in from New York, Westchester area, and I'm a teacher, teach high school humanities, and I teach philosophy at a local college in Westchester.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Go, Alden.
Hi, I'm Alden. I'm currently in Provincetown, Massachusetts. It is very hot. And I am a professor at Emerson College. I teach creative writing and literature, and I think we need to upend everything we do. So that's why I'm here.
Beautiful. Definitely writing is one of the main topics that I want to ask Zena about. Can't wait to hear her thoughts on that. Thank you. Go, Jacqueline.
Hi, everybody. So like Paul said, we're colleagues at Pepperdine University in Malibu. I can see that Paul is there. That looks like your office, Paul. I'm up in Calgary, Canada, which is where my husband is a professor at the University of Calgary. I've been on maternity leave for the last 2 semesters. I have a baby asleep in the next room, so if I suddenly disappear, you'll know why. I hope he's a fan of the great books. We're trying to get him started earlier. Great books and less AI is what I'm hoping. But I'm actually on sabbatical this coming semester, so away from Malibu for too long. But this is very timely. I just taught a summer course on Virginia Woolf last month, and AI came up. I'll spare you the details, but it's very timely right now.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jacqueline. Go, Ahaz. I think I'm still.
Hi, my name is Awaz. I'm a PhD student in health economics, and I'm based out of Washington, DC.
Beautiful. Thank you. Go Roxanne.
Hey, I'm Roxanne, sitting right now in Morzine. It's in the French Alps. So I'm not sure if you're in the European area, but
Yeah.
I'm in that part of the world, and I'm originally living from Denmark, and I'm a venture founder, actually an AI founder. I exited a couple of years ago, and last year I founded a school, and I think it's a fascinating area. So I'm
Wow.
here to learn together what your thoughts are as well.
That's an interesting trajectory. Thank you.
A different, I guess, a different background a bit.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Thank you. Go Andy.
Hi, everybody. I'm in Bath in the UK. I used to be a teacher, now a software engineer, but I'm fascinated by AI, all the good and the bad. So yeah, really looking forward to the conversation.
Beautiful. And I love the plushies on the background, Andy. Thank you. Go David.
Hi, I'm David. I'm also in a Philadelphia suburb. I'm a retired transportation economist, currently serving as an elected official in my local government and that sort of thing. I actually have a copy of Zena's books right here.
Beautiful.
And I'm just interested in the general area of how AI is going to realize itself in so many things of what we are used to doing ourselves.
Beautiful. Thank you, David.
I'm in a public place, so I'll probably be relatively quiet.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Nevertheless, thank you. We still have two people, so I'm still going to pronounce your name poorly, probably. Sorry, Egel.
Agla. Close enough.
Agla.
You're doing very well. I'm Agla. I'm based in London, UK. So right now it's 9 p.m. My time, hence all the errands. I am an advisor on using AI for organizational learning. So this is my professional area, and my personal interest is AI, how AI affects the way we learn, our cognition, and all of these things, and our skills. Not necessarily just in organizational learning, but in any kind of learning, formal, informal, all sorts of things. So I was really excited when I saw this event pop up.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Egel. And now we have the two, not Egel, sorry, Egel. God, sorry. I'm bad. I'm usually the only excuse that I have is that people cannot pronounce my name either. So I feel like kind of okay with that. So that's my excuse. There's two people left before we actually jump in. So Dasha, do you want to tell us where you're calling from? And if I'm pronouncing your name right?
Yeah, hi. My name is Dash and I'm from Ukraine. I'm a language coach, Ukrainian and Russian. I work online and I'm really wondering how AI is going to affect my profession. So I'm also new to the platform, so I don't really know much how this works. So I'm just
okay. No worries. I'll give a small introduction. Thank you, Dasha. And finally, Shoti, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Lovely. Close enough.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, I'm calling in from San Francisco, and not an educator in startups, but just a really fascinating topic, and love Zena's book, and of course love the Catherine Project, where I participated in reading book groups, and so just excited to be here and learn.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for showing up, everyone. Some people might actually jump in, but this is the amount of time that we have for the actual introduction. So just a couple of thoughts, like Zena, hopefully you guys know her, but still she'll have a moment in. I'll ask you just to give us a little bit a brief introduction, just so we're aware of what your personal introduction looks like. But just a quick note, I want to say, so I'm João, I'm from Portugal, so it's also 9 p.m. here to those, and in France is even later. So thank you for being here at this hour. I'm an educator. I was a jazz musician. I eventually had a wrist injury shifted careers actually to education, and I've been working on it with Interintellect for a while. And the way that we're actually doing this is I'm interviewing Zena for the first hour, more or less on a couple of questions that I have, and then we'll open the conversation to everyone who wants to jump in with questions. You can either like unmute and ask your question to Zena. You can also use the chat. If I see that there's a lot of people with questions, I'll probably reduce my own just to make sure that we have as much time as possible to enjoy Zena's view on all of these different topics. I want to say two things. First of all, of course, thanks to the Interintellect, which is the platform that allows us to be here. And thank you so much to all of you for being here. I will say that the only thing that I'm more than nervous is excited, but I'm really, really nervous about interviewing Zena, okay? But hopefully things will go well. And you guys, yes, he's almost like a monster, yeah. But you guys can also jump in with your own questions to make it all easier. That being said, if at any given moment you see me watching or looking at this is the second screen, okay? I'm not talking with everyone else, just the second screen where I have people in the waiting room, my notes, etc. That being said, Zena, can you give us just a small introduction on who are you and why are we here today?
Yes, I am. My name is Zena Hitz. I'm from San Francisco originally, so I'm happy to see someone from my home place. I was a childhood bookworm. I teach now at St. John's in Annapolis, which is a storied experimental great books program that was founded as such in 1937. I was an undergraduate here. And came back to teach here 10 years ago, and came back here after some intense personal experiences, including a religious conversion and some time in a monastery. And during that time, really crystallized my thinking about why learning mattered for us. That is, not just for me personally, but for our communities, ordinary people. And ever since those thoughts crystallized, I've been trying to communicate them to a broad audience. And so, yeah, happy to be here. I also did, as Swati mentioned, found an organization called the Catherine Project, which offers open, free, online, high quality seminars on great books. So I'm trying to spread the practice as widely as I can. And it's been going great. So anyway, thrilled to be here. Happy to talk about whatever you guys would like to talk about.
Beautiful. Thank you, Zena. Okay, so I want to start with the actual, the topic around this, which is, of course, AI in education. And I feel like one of the things that we need to do in order to move with the conversation forward, just to have a working definition of, learning and education. And so I would love for you to share a little bit of how you define these two things, and also maybe tell us a little bit about the distinction that you make between instrumental learning and actually hidden learning or true learning.
Okay, those are hard questions, actually, to start off cold. How would I put it? I think learning is something which fundamentally matters for its own sake. So one of the reasons why our communities and our societies and our institutions are so confused and so confusing on this front is that learning is also extremely useful. So we learn when we train for a job, we learn when we engage with other human beings, we learn in social relationships, we learn in church or our religious practice, we learn at the gym about our bodies, we learn music, we learn sports. And we also learn how to navigate our economies, we learn how to make money, how to make careers. And that's all learning. So that's all part of what the words human development are kind of the best I can do. And they seem kind of flat to me, but that is what we're doing. That is, when we're learning, we're developing habits, habits of mind, habits of feeling, habits of thinking, habits of perception. We learn to notice things. We learn to react to things in certain ways. We learn not to react to things in certain ways. And we learn how to analyze and compute and think and plan in various contexts. So the kind of learning I've always been most interested in is learning for its own sake, which I think of as being most easily seen through examples. So Simone Weil's brother, Andre Weil, he's in prison in 1940 because he's refusing to enter the German army. And he's working on mathematical proofs while he's in prison. And why is he doing that? It's not building his career. He's in prison. In fact, his world is falling apart. He's in Europe in 1940. So what's he doing? He's looking at the mathematical things and as things which are valuable in them of themselves and exercising them the same way that a musician, if they were in prison with just their instrument, might play their instrument, or the way that someone who'd memorized a lot of poetry might recite poetry. So there are examples of that kind. For me, it's great books, reading, conversation, writing, study, all connected to what I would call fundamental questions. Questions about the nature of human beings in the universe and human community and the point of life. And as I see it, that kind of reflection on the point of life or the point of work or the point of a community or the role of an individual in a community, which if you spend time in the great books, you see is such a rich set of topics with infinite permutations in different points in history and from different authors and in different genres, in novels and in philosophy and in history and political theory and in other things. So those fundamental questions about what life is for, those guide and ought to guide our use of tools, whatever they are, and our judgments about what instrumental things we should be pursuing. That is, we should have a sense of what good life is, a sense of what it means to flourish as human beings, individually and in our communities. And we should make choices about what we do with an eye to that goal. That doesn't mean everything we do has to be, playing music or art or the moment of victory in the soccer field or, pure contemplation. But it means that everything is done with something in mind. And if there's a question, you can follow the reasoning back. You can say, I'm doing this because of this. So just one thing I would say about just to start us off on the question about technology is, what are we using it for? What's the point of a tool? So, like any tool, you have a hammer. There's ways of using hammers for human flourishing, building things. Where would we be without hammers? We'd be lost. There are ways of using hammers violently or destructively. And so we need to think carefully about how we use any tool, including digital.
Yeah. So thank you for that beautiful answer. I think that it really helps us to have like this notion of the landscape of learning, and now we can get into the part of technology and exactly where does it integrate, or where does it it may actually help us in some way, or how can we use it as a tool to help us flourish, and how can we use it in a dangerous way, let's call it that. So one of the questions, or the basic questions that I've had, I've read some of your tweets about your relationship with AI and education. I've listened to some of the interviews that you did and some of the things that you wrote, and I think I have a good idea, but I would love to understand, like, what do you think is the major threat that AI poses right now to education, And then I want to and we can start off there, and then I want to explore that the relationship between AI and maybe education as a field, but also AI and the learner, because I feel like these are two different topics that need two different focuses. But let's start with, what do you think is the biggest danger that AI poses to the field of education right now?
So I am really, any of you who know about AI or who work in computing will figure out very quickly that I am no kind of expert on AI. But I do know the following thing. The following thing is that the type of AI, there's various types of AIs, and the one that is most centrally seems to be entering human life and affecting education is the large language model. Okay, which is the ChatGPT, the Claude. So there are other things that AI can do. I don't understand what they are. But the large language model is the type of AI that seems to be the thing that's replacing the search engine, and the thing which, in certain circumstances, is replacing education, and replacing learning. So the way I would put it most concisely is that the educational system, and I'm going to be speaking mostly about the system in the US, because it's the one that I know.
Of course.
And those of you who are in other countries and other contexts will have to adapt it. I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it is. But we have in the US a very a set of institutions which deliver what you'd call mass education, and take a college classroom, totally standard college classroom, very common at public universities, also seen at private universities. You go to lectures. The lectures have a large number of people in them, maybe as few as 50, maybe as many as 200 or 300. Then you divide into sections, and you have conversations, and you do writing. And in the smaller groups, you have your work is evaluated by a teaching assistant or by someone of that kind. So that's an example of a mass education college class. And what LLMs are doing, as is widely reported, and both anecdotally and in more
studies,
in studies,
research,
exactly, is that instead of, say, when you leave the lecture, you do the reading, you think about the reading, you come to class with questions, you're engaging the reading or the whatever the course material is, the mathematical material, the scientific material, you bring whatever questions you have that come from your personal encounter with that material into the classroom. You ask your teacher, you ask the teaching assistant or whatever. You go through some process, and then you're evaluated by means of essays or exams or what have you. So what happens is that the large language model shortcuts. So it produces the outputs, not just, mind you, the written outputs, which is the most famous way. So you can write it, you can have your large language model write an essay on any topic you like. And it's going to have some identifiable properties, but you can also train it to do better. You can train it on your own, something you've written already. You can train it on all kinds of things, or you can fiddle with it to make it take away its most obvious things. So there's the writing. But worse than that, you can use it to ask questions in class, for instance, or to provide summaries of the material. And because these large language models are mostly, so far as I know, trained on the internet. So they're trained on a large, uncurated set of sources, some of which are high quality and some of which are not. So just as with Google, if you ask Google a question, you may get, if you know what you're doing, some quite high quality answers, or you may get something that someone's trying to sell you, or something completely false, or so on. So, and from what I understand, large language models also make errors in their processing, where they fabricate information that is not part of their sources. So basically, something which a structure which was built on an understanding that a student would encounter some material and study it and then be evaluated on how well they studied it is being shortcut. Now, mind you, I never like to pick on the young people. So it's also true that I think that faculty, especially beleaguered faculty, are doing exactly the same thing. So instead of drawing on their research and they're reading journal articles and they're thinking through things which are connected to their field and then presenting them in a boiled down way for their students, they too may be, I suspect often are, using the large language model to generate teaching material. So the prospect that you end up with, which is the darkest prospect, it seems to me, on the current educational horizon, is the professor is using ChatGPT to generate some material, and the students use large language model. I don't mean to pick out a particular brand.
That's okay.
So the professor uses large language model to produce some material. The student uses large language model to respond to the assignments. No learning takes place and no teaching takes place. The whole thing is a kind of a joke. And it's a joke that's taking place on such a large scale that no one can quite bring themselves to acknowledge it. Because the grades are still getting put out, the credits are still being given, the degrees are still coming out. But as this happens more and more, the whole institution and its purpose gets hollowed out. Until what's in fact going on is totally pointless. And it's a matter of time in turn, just to dramatize it even more, a matter of time before that hollowness of those institutions then becomes recognized, at which point we have no educational institutions that can handle people on the scale that they have been handled. And in fact, we've forgotten, many of us, what it was ever supposed to be like. So, and then our capacities to read, study, think, understand, calculate, all of those capacities, which are built by education, they're built by learning, they can be lost. They are not built-in programming, so to speak. They are built into us in such a way that they need to be developed. For education.
So no, that's beautiful. I love the idea of a teacher using an LLM to create the content, the student using LLM to solve it. I was having this discussion with the student last year, and he told me that, well, maybe we can just, put the students' LLM and the teacher's LLM talk with each other, and then we could just go onto a coffee and just read a book and talk. I was like, yeah, well, that's what education should look like, right? So, but one question that I have is a big part of what you're saying relates with the quality of the answers that these technologies are giving to the students. Assuming that the quality just improves dramatically, that will still change the way that we educate nevertheless, because the moment that I have a device or I have the opportunity to ask any question in the world and have a high quality answer, suddenly that must change the way that we do education. So I guess that my follow-up question would be, do you think that these institutions, should we just wait until the quality of the technology gets to a point where it's very high and then figure out how to integrate it? And so it's almost like we don't want AI right now in education, and then when the quality is good, we can adopt it? Or is it, this is here, people are going to use it as an institution, as part of the educational context in the world, we need to quickly adapt? So what are some of your thoughts on the integration of it in the future?
I don't think that the only problem is the low quality.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear about that. So I think it's true, and I hear about examples every day, honestly. Whenever I talk to someone who's my own institution is a little insulated, but because we're just analog people, it's just a culture. But whenever I hear story, they pile up all the time, the stories of scandalous mistakes that are presented under very convincing guises of knowledge. So one favorite example I have that I heard pretty recently is someone looking up a certain use of the Greek subjunctive, so the use of subjunctive in ancient Greece. And the large language model produced something that looked like you would have found it in a grammar book with instances of this version of the subjunctive. And the version of the subjunctive didn't exist. And none of the other passages existed apart from the one that the person was looking up. So this is like completely fabricated thing, looks exactly like real learning and has nothing. Okay. But as I say, and you're right to raise the question, it shouldn't just depend on the low quality of it, because it seems to me obviously something that can be adjusted. You could train your AI on, for instance, the contents of a research library catalog. And by doing that, you would automatically restrict tons of terrible garbage that's out there. And the chances of your answer being correct or close to correct or plausible would go up. But you're still, the student and the professor are still not using their own minds when they present that. And so in a way you have to ask yourself, what's the point of producing the correct answer, or what's the point of giving a lecture? So take GPS, for example, which is probably the most common AI type computing tool that people use. That's the thing people can't live without. Does it really matter if you don't know exactly how to get from point A to point B, because you've always used a machine to tell you exactly step by step how to go there? Maybe not. Like, I'm a big fan of analog navigation. I like to do it. It's my hobby. But like, you still get to where you want to go. And so that's a case, transportation is a case where what you want to do is to get from one place to another. And you can use your own mind or analog materials, maps, people's directions, or you can use your GPS and you'll get there just the same. Whereas in the case of learning, what you're aiming at is not, in the end, a grade, a credit. What you want is the habit of mind.
Learning.
You want you want your own mind and body to develop in a certain way. So for the same reason, like, you would never, I'm sure they have robots that can play soccer. Okay. So you would never send your child out to, and say, look, you don't have to go to soccer practice. The robot can do it for you. Then you would see, I think, very clearly that something's wrong. Or, oh, you know what? Your piano lessons, let's throw out the piano lessons because we have one of these mechanical piano players do it fine. So the goal is to acquire some capacity and to develop your capacities as a human being. If that's the goal, then the kind of scenario I'm describing where the computers talk to computers is totally destructive.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good they are. The fact that they're bad only illustrates, I guess, what it illustrates the forces at work, right? So it's, why are we using these cruddy machines in our educational institutions now? Like, they're not producing correct answers. So there's obviously something else that's going on, and that's worthy of investigation. It might be a little bit outside of our topic, but it's worthy of investigation. Like, why is this happening? Is it something people want? Is it a way of getting things that are valuable, or what? Anyway, sorry.
So, no, totally fine. I have so what I'll do is I know that I said that I will do an hour with you, and then I would open the question. Maybe what I'm doing, everyone, what I'm thinking of doing is I'll ask you one extra question, and I'll pause and open it to everyone so you guys can ask questions around this theme of, you know, AI and educational institutions, and then we'll move on to AI and learning. I'll go back with my questions and I'll open it up once again. And so you mentioned so because you were mentioning like, well, what are the forces at play? And the truth is, it based on most of the way that education works, where people, as you said, they go into these seminars, they practice these materials, or these lectures, sorry, they practice the materials, they're evaluated on essays, etc. Introducing AI here in that model really facilitates, because the incentive is to get the essay in order to get the grade, in order to get the diploma.
Right.
And so in that way, I see an argument that educators and students can make of course we want to integrate this. This facilitates the job, right? But you mentioned, I think it was in an interview that you did in the podcast, in a previous podcast, where you mentioned that there's these environments where people don't want to use AI, which is very different from the typical environment where you find in regular schools. At least the experience that I've been having, not particularly where I work at the Socratic Experience, but in other online schools, in present schools here in Portugal, happens all the time. Students really want to use ChatGPT, DeepSeek, whatever the model is, so they can get it off easily. But there's environments where people actually don't want to use AI. So and you mentioned that in your interview, and I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that. And in your view, because as you're saying, like St. John's is pretty analog, you're a pretty analog person. I wasn't even sure that you were joining because of the email, as you were mentioning. So that's how analog Zena is, everyone. I was worried that Zena wasn't showing up because I didn't got a reply for her. So you're clearly on brand here. But my question is, like, how, so can you talk a little bit about those environments, and from your perspective, how can we design more of those where we design a learning environment where students actually don't want to use AI because they see it as useless?
Right. So let me just say one more sentence about the
please do.
So part of what happens, and I get reports on this from my college age relations all the time in mass education, is that the pressures on the faculty and on the course structure are such that, so there's administrative pressure for the classes to be larger because it's cheaper. And then there's pressure on the faculty to give simpler assignments and so there's a kind of a simplifying effect, which can really deaden, it doesn't always, but it can really deaden a natural desire to learn. So, so all of my work is predicated on the fact that there is such a thing as a natural desire to learn. And our schooling does not always nurture it. It does not always nurture it. And so, especially if you have a really automated mass education system, you're already working against the tide in terms of nurturing the love of learning in your students. And then you bring in this thing where this shortcut, and of course you use it. So I try to be very careful not to judge the students, because I think the incentives are set up in such a way that it doesn't make sense to them not to use it. And that's a sign of a colossal failure on the part of those responsible for educational institutions. So I'll just use myself for an example, for an instant, just to try to illustrate what I think, why you might just not be motivated to use AI. Because I am totally unmotivated. I am completely uninterested. I'm interested in it as a political problem, as a cultural problem, as a way of thinking about education and how to solve it, pedagogical problem, but I'm not interested in it for myself. Why? Because I'm like the person who likes to fix their own car, okay? I like to fix my own car. I know how to do it. I have special ways of doing it. And the fact that you tell me there's a mechanic on the corner that can do it for cheaper and faster, I'm not interested. Because what I love to do is fix my own car. Like there's not something else I want to do instead. I want to be involved in this activity of going to the library, getting my paper sources, pouring through the paper sources, like making notes, like starting to get like my mind to churn and thinking through some difficulty or some problem, or posing some question, or talking to students in a way that's going to draw out their thinking. Like that's what makes me happy. Like that's what I love. So there's nothing if someone says to me, oh, you could do this faster, oh, you could do something else instead, it doesn't make any sense to me. So in a place like St. John's, what we try to do is to cultivate and attract and harness that kind of spirit. That is the spirit of wanting to fix your car yourself, wanting to think through your ideas for yourself. And I think in previous eras, at least in the US, that was much more part of the culture. So for instance, when I was growing up in the 1970s and 1980s, Second World War was still something memorable. And so people were really preoccupied. It's like, I don't want to, suppose that what I'm getting from my culture is the same kind of thing that Germans got from the Nazis. I need to be critical and aware of what kinds of things are being piped into my mind. And I need to make my own decisions. And it's connected with a lot of what you'd call civic education for citizens of more or less democratic communities, where you don't want to obey an authority without having some understanding of what's being asked of you. And maybe to the extent that you can evaluate your authorities, you want to do that. So there's a civic dimension and there's an intellectual dimension. And those things were quite strong when I was young, and they're not strong anymore. But at any rate, St. John's is very small. It's a community where, in principle, everyone could know each other. We just have like 450 students. Not that many, very, very few students, more like a high school or sixth form type school in Europe. In terms of size, we all do one thing. So most universities and colleges are on a consumer model, especially in the US. So you have, say, distribution requirements that you have to do to fill your degree, but you can fill them any number of ways. And so there's a kind of competition that doesn't always appeal to the best motivations. So it could be kind of race to the bottom as to which courses will draw the most students. So that's shortcut. Everyone takes the same course. And in those courses, we have small discussion classes. Like the largest classes we have are 20 students with 2 co-leaders. And we often have as few as, say, 12 or 15 students. That's the normal size of a class. And we have each other, our classes last 1 year, not a semester or a term as they might elsewhere. So and the students have responsibility for maintaining the conversation. So they're on the one hand very exposed in terms of being a part of this small conversation. It's a very small community with a certain kind of culture and norms that are visible. So you come there and you stay there because you want to be a part of something where people are exercising their minds in asking these questions, and where people are concerned to think things through for themselves, and who won't trust even something like an excellent secondary source on a philosopher. Because even the most excellent secondary sources, I can tell you as a professional philosopher, they're often, they make judgments, and the judgments can be wrong. And you might see something, even you as a college freshman, even you as a high school student, might see something in your encounter with a source that's different. So it's worthwhile to do it on your own. And when you have experience and practice in reading for yourself, thinking for yourself, working with others collaboratively to get further in understanding difficult material or in exploring certain questions, you like it. It's incredibly satisfying. It's fun. It's like playing soccer. You don't have to like egg your kid on like, oh no, you've got to go to soccer practice, like get out of here. They want to go to soccer practice because using your body in that way is wonderful. And the same way, using your mind to read and to think and to have a conversation is wonderful. So you offer the fruits of these things very nearby, and there's a lot of exposure. So cheating is much harder to do. There's much more risk of exposure. And also the thing that you're doing it for is much more visible. It's something everyone in the community cares about. So you don't have to supply it for yourself. I mean, I would honestly, if I knew students, I'm sure there are such students who are in these large public, these like mass education institutions, and what they really want is to learn for their own sake. Like, they are having a tough time. They are not being supported.
Absolutely.
And they are not being encouraged. So, so anyway, that's the kind of environment I have. And I don't have, I'm not a policymaker. Okay. So I don't have a vision for how we reproduce this everywhere. I just do think that we need to wake up and think about what those of us who work in educational institutions, what is my institution doing? Is it still doing the thing it's supposed to be doing? If it isn't, what kind of institution will? Can we redirect some of our resources to build those new institutions or to reform our old institutions? And I think it's going to be something messy and complicated, and very much dependent on the particular needs of particular communities and the kinds of learning that they want to do or need to do.
Yeah.
But learning always, even the most practical kind of learning, even learning how to fix a car, is something that you gain for yourself. It can't be outsourced. It's just not, it's not in the concept of learning, I don't think. So anyway, that's an extreme view.
No, thank you. Yeah, I'll say one comment and then I'll open up to everyone's question. I think Paul wants to ask a question or share a perspective, but I feel like it's also really related with the kind of questions that people ask as educators. And I feel like if we're able to ask questions to students which AI answers are useless, then that's where like their engagement just drives in. If you play a piece of music and ask them, well, why do you enjoy this piece of music? They can go and look to AI, hey, ChatGPT, hey, something. Why do I like that music? He won't know, right? So I think reframing the question is part of having this environment where people just think that some of the AI answers are useless. But yeah, so I'll open up 2 questions to everyone who wants to answer to question Zena before we move on to a series of other questions that I have around AI and the learner. So Paul, I think you wanted to go, so go ahead.
Thanks so much. Just very quickly, Zena, so much of what you're saying resonates. I'm going to be using it in my syllabus, I dare say, weaving it in. This goal of creating a desire to be a certain kind of human being is what I need to kind of inspire. I'm having first-year students come in a couple of weeks. But push against 2 things in a very limited way. I do go to a car mechanic. If I fixed my own car, it would blow up. So 2 cheers for efficiency. There were times when I used to say to my kids, it's like 10 years ago, and Google was still new to me. And okay, somebody take out your Google. And of course, I sounded like the ultimate boomer. Take out your Google. And just like, when was the Peloponnesian War? Let's get the dates right. Efficiency for facts. Okay, there's that. But then the other thing, and this may fly in the face of, great books orthodoxy, as I sometimes call it. But, I'm teaching Ovid for the first time. And I'm reading secondary criticism, even as I'm reading the primary text. And in Ovid's case, being at times horrified by the violence, especially violence toward women, and edified by secondary criticism, which I read critically, in which some are emphasizing that particular aspect or some are emphasizing the aesthetics. And it's going to nurture my own ability to go into the classroom and teach Ovid, ask better questions. So just 2 brief cheers for those 2 things. Yes.
Sure. So the car mechanic example has limited, so it's all I'm really saying in that case with that example is sometimes things are worth doing for yourself. Okay. Now, fixing your own car, I don't fix my own car. I do try to navigate using analog tools. That's just my hobby. It's for fun. But the problem is that learning is so fundamental to what it means to be a human being. You can pick and choose which operations you want to outsource, but you especially don't want to outsource your thinking about fundamental questions. That you really, because then you're using the tool to justify the tool or whatever. Like you need to know why you're using whatever tool you're using. And for that matter, the same goes for secondary literature, which I don't know whether I've told you this before, but I do scholarly work and I pore through literature, and it helps me to see clearly what I think about the text, or helps me to think about something. But it's one thing to use a tool when you know how to use it, where what's the end result is I'm making a judgment. I'm thinking about something. And for what it's worth, and in case someone else is thinking about asking this, I think that AI tools can be used that way.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in using them. As I say, I like to fix my own car, but I want to be in the library. I want to be touching with my hands, the paper, like, I don't even read online on screens. Like, I just don't want to do it. But I think people can use AI as a tool. Then I think, but the question for education is, we don't want to presume that somehow the critically thinking, fully educated person who has a sense of how to use these tools is already there.
That's right.
Because I'm like that or you're like that. I mean,
Exactly.
You
the
and I
18-year-old isn't. That's right.
We grew up without the internet, you and me. So, like, we grew up in a different way. We know how to use stuff. And that doesn't mean we're free from corruption, but it means that there's hope. Whereas if you're talking about bringing up young people, you have to train them to have the skills that they then learn how to outsource if they so choose. So think about calculators. Okay, everyone uses calculators, but we still teach kids arithmetic, even though the calculator can do your arithmetic for you, because we think that there's something about learning arithmetic that shapes your mind and helps you to understand what it is that you're using the calculator for. So there still is a central importance for developing people, and that's not going to go away. However, different people decide to use different tools for at different times, that can't be, you can't outsource. You can't get rid of it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very good, Zena. Thank you. I still more questions from everyone. Is there anyone who has other questions? Bill Walden.
May I ask something? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. We can do Kelly and then Walden.
Okay. So my question has to do with, in some ways, it's a practical question. And I happen to agree with pretty much everything that Zena said. And I actually just wrote a little piece on this sort of thing. As I said, I'm a high school teacher, and I also teach at a small college near me. And I am kind of gearing up for battle because I made my views open and public about this. And I'm just waiting for, the humanities teachers, my colleagues agree with me in large measure. Many of the others do not. And one of the proposals, I guess I'm curious about your thoughts, but just as a community of people here, others who are educators too, one of the proposals that's on the table that I'm in favor of, but it's very risky in my particular community, because this is I teach at a high school that is in Greenwich, Connecticut. These girls are very high-powered. They come from high-powered families who have an entirely instrumentalized view of education. They pay big money. They expect, you know, their girls to go to the tippy-top schools and so on and so on. And so they really lack motivation to learn for its own sake. And so I get rid of all laptops and all devices in my classroom, right? But that's just one room, one period of the day. So it's a constant uphill battle. And back to the proposal, I do the same in my college classroom, but back to the proposal that a few of us have is, my goodness, what if we were to just go scorched earth and allow no, or at least in humanities, allow no AI whatsoever, at least in the building, in the classrooms, you know, as the children are learning and so on, just as a pilot program for a few years, right? And that would include that all writing assignments would be done in class, which, yes, takes away from teaching time. We'd have to figure that out, exactly when that would happen. That sort of makes impossible, you know, the art of learning how to do a research paper, or at least write one that we know is actually written by the student. It presents problems for sure, but what I'm interested about in this idea is just sort of clearing the decks, because you just can't get it out. And just starting over and just like, let's see what they can do. Let's see if we can kind of rebuild and reorient them as learners, and just see what happens. But again, that's very risky. I'm pretty sure the administrators aren't going to go for it. But it's a real problem, and we're so entrenched, and it just knocks the joy out of teaching and learning. So
Yeah.
I'm here to get everybody's thoughts. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't want to hog all the airtime. If this is
I was going to say something kind of similar, so maybe I'll jump on that if that's okay. I teach literature to undergrads at an art and it's an art school basically. So they want to be there and they want to learn, and they're not going to use AI for their creative writing, but certainly they will for their academic papers. And I've already done like totally no tech, absolutely no tech unless you have an accommodation. All paper text, we read in class. We actually read in class, you know, like get started. I'll take all the dread out, and I like I give them in the paper with the assignment on it, and they have to start writing it right in class, all that stuff. But I also, you know, I'm a writer and I use AI, you know, like I generate I'm thinking about a book and I'm like, I'll just, you know, see what ChatGPT would think of for like a table of contents. So if I'm doing that, like there's no hope that they're not going to use it, you know, like, and it's really helpful for some stuff that takes a long time that isn't really the best kind of, you know, like thinking. So I guess my thought is like, I'm just sort of hoping that, like you're saying, Kelly, like we can create this kind of sacred space that education is this valuable space because it is free of technology and because it is the only place your mind can think freely without input, whatever. But I guess the question that I'm struggling with the most is, well, first of all, how to talk to other educators, because I feel like most people are really stuck in the first two stages of grief, you know, like I'll just tell them they can't use it and it'll be fine. I'm so mad at my students because they're using ChatGPT. I'm like, you would have used it when you were stressed out in college. Like it's too good and it's too available. So the question is, how do we get to the fifth stage? And what do we do with like the fact that sometimes it is useful and sometimes it's not? And like, how do we find that line where it's like some people have suggested like spend an hour of your week every week, like using the tools that your students use so that you know what they're using so that you can teach around it. But it's just going to be like an arms race, right? Like they're just going to keep getting new tools and like, so I guess I'm just dumping it all on the table, but like, where is that line in terms of where we can expect students, and maybe it will vary by age and institution and that kind of thing, but like to want to think on their own versus to get the job done?
Yeah, I think I'm hearing two things. I'm extremely sympathetic, and I I remember, I mean, one of the reasons why I had an early midlife crisis and quit academia for a while and went to the religious community is because this was before AI. I mean, there was internet plagiarism, which was the old thing. But I felt like in these mass education classes, what I was doing in my own classroom was very limited in terms of its influence on the students. So I was like beating against the tide. Like if I'm the only professor who's enforcing the plagiarism rules, then like it's not going to be enough. And the whole culture of the place is cutting against it. So I think that there's it's worth thinking sympathetically about this. If I'm right, okay, which is up for debate. This is a salon after all. It's not like Zena's kingdom. But if I'm right that this is just shortcutting basic human things, then that means that there's a massive, like the scope of the problem is massive and very severe. And lots and lots of, we know that means on the one hand that it's going to be very, very hard in any given context to fix. And on the other hand, lots of people are suffering under it. So like what we're doing now is the right thing to do, right? So lots of people are sharing the suffering. I do think that, and I think Alden hit on it, there's questions about what you can restrict in the classroom. And as you've already indicated, everyone's got to be on board, at least to know that that's a valuable thing to do. Administrators, parents, students, everyone has to be online with it. Otherwise, you need to find ways to cultivate. I mean, we all need to find ways, not you. I don't mean to single you out and put you under more pressure. You're under enough. But we need to find ways to build the motivation and the understanding of what's being lost. That's it's a massive project. I mean, it's made smaller in a given community, and sometimes certain communities are hard ground and others aren't. But like if a student doesn't know what it's like to learn something for themselves, no amount of restriction, like the restrictions are really just have to be thought of as a means to get someone to have that experience so that they want it. And likewise, parents, administrators, like everyone has to know that that's the thing that we're aiming for. I mean, the alternative to restrictions is, which I think this is the other thing that people talk about in these contexts, is try to teach the students what this thing is that they're using. Teach them about the tool. Okay, here is one of the things that shocked me recently was learning that most young people don't know the difference between a primary source and a secondary source. Okay, so the kind of debate Paul and I were having, very old-fashioned. So here is a primary source. Here is how a secondary source is made out of a primary source. This is all in the realm of paper. Here's what happened when the secondary sources end up on the internet and are used by a search engine. Here is what happens when all of that is being fed into a machine that's automating responses and like using whatever tools it has to analyze and collate and curate that information that it's looking at. So I think if that, I think at least can undermine some of if it's done well, and if people are more with it, it can undermine some of the stubborn, like, what are you talking about? Like, which is the hardest thing to deal with, where it's like, what do you mean? Like, I use ChatGPT for recipes. I use ChatGPT for all kinds of things. Why I use it for making toasts at weddings. I use it for whatever. What are you telling me? I can't use it to write my history paper? What are you talking about? You have to say, well, what's history? So we need to, all of us, find ways to communicate the fundamental thing that we care about and to try to transmit it as best as we can. But I think that the demoralization is very common, very real, and it's not obvious. I really don't think it's obvious what to do in many of these circumstances. And ultimately, I think we probably need to be moving into different kinds of institutions, and letting those institutions have whatever effect they're going to have on the people that make their way to them. But that in its own way is very bleak. Anyway, I'm going on and on. I'll be quiet. Sorry, Joe.
No, please, totally fine. I'll add a comment to what Alden was saying, because I feel like this all ties to a question I wanted to ask you, Zena. But I've actually spent the last year teaching a class on emerging technologies. And so it's impossible to teach, or it's really hard to teach a class on emerging technologies without talking about the technologies that they're using the most, AI. And so one of the rules that I had in my class was that if you're using AI, you need to tell me how you're using it. So we would share screens and they would show me the prompts that they were using. And I would try to explain to them what were some of the uses that they could take from that tool. Like the hammer example, right? That's an hammer. It's not like a frying pan. There's no point in putting a piece of meat on a hammer and trying to grill it. It won't work. And so, and that was actually something that students really value, the idea for them to understand that, oh, okay, so there's a difference between a Google search, there's a difference between going to the library or reading a PDF, and there's a difference between asking ChatGPT something, and then them trying to find a way of coming together. And one of the things that we did, and students really enjoy it, because it allowed for fact-checking, for themselves to do some fact-checking, and they kind of thought of themselves as almost like detectives trying to correct the AI, was to find, whenever they had access to a given research paper or something like that, they could upload it in their LLM and ask them questions about the actual paper. So they would ask the LLM to embody the person that wrote the paper and ask them the questions, quoting every single thing directly from the PDF. So if the answer is X, the LLM should say, this is where in the PDF you'll find the answer. And so it was interesting because most of the times it would work, but then it would make some inferences on some conclusions, and the students were like, well, but that's not everywhere. And so them started to develop that understanding was something that it was really interesting. So because when you were mentioning like going to the library and just watching all these books, I'm always, whenever I see pictures of public libraries in the US, I'm always at awe because I'm from a small town in Portugal. My library is probably smaller than the one that you have in your background. So it's like having, to a student that has such thing, suddenly having access to all of this information, I mean, in my personal opinion, to just say that they cannot, or that it cannot be used to foster learning, I think that that's not the case. It's just that we need to make sure that students know how to use it in order to create this deeper sense of learning. So is there anything that you wanted to say before I jump into the question? Go ahead, sorry.
No, you can ask the question. Go ahead.
Okay, so because I feel like the one thing I remember reading Lost in Thought, and one of the things that really like stuck with me was the difference between knowledge and understanding. And so the idea that, and I think that this is what a big part of what we're talking about. LLMs can have all of this knowledge, but that doesn't translate directly into students' understanding, right? And so by highlighting this, I think that we can help students to understand, okay, well, I have all of this knowledge, but what does that mean? That's the part where you need to figure it out, right? And so, and I guess my question is, how can we ensure, or what are some of the things that we can do in order for students to understand this, and how can we help them understand that just because you have knowledge, that doesn't translate directly into understanding? Because I feel like once they understand that, then the passion of learning might actually come out.
So I suppose there's two things I'd like to say in response, and one is I'm still thinking over what Kelly and Alden were talking about and the circumstances that they're in. The challenge of the moment is to motivate this type of learning, okay? A real thing, which is not really a type of learning, actually just learning. Learning, I think, is essentially something that you get for yourself.
Mhm.
And in a way, although I recognize that in certain circumstances, explaining the tools and talking about the tools is the best that you can do, I do worry that that's all time and energy that's going into not like the advantage of what Kelly called the scorched earth policy is you're saying with conviction, your mind matters. Okay, like you student, your mind is important. Like all of our minds matter and they need development, they need food, they need to grow. And that's in danger of being lost. Like it really is. And if it's lost, that's very bad. Not just for people like me who live in this luxurious book-filled office, okay, and get to do this wonderful kind of teaching. It's a loss, especially for people in reduced circumstances, because, you know, for Lost in Thought, I collected all kinds of stories about like, and there's more that I found afterwards, you know, someone like Roosevelt Montas, who's taught in the Columbia Corps for a long time, American professor and thinker. He was an immigrant refugee from the Dominican Republic. He was living in New York City with nothing, and he found a copy of Plato in the trash. And he started to read it. So he found it in the trash. Now, that's something which only happens with a physical book. The capacities to evaluate information are more and more limited in terms of their access. So for instance, even I, who teach at a college, I don't have regular access to a research library catalog. And the research library catalog is the gold standard. That is the way into finding all of the things which can help you to evaluate things, to help you evaluate your information. Now, you can't get access to them very easily. And an ordinary person has zero access to them, absolutely zero. They don't even know they exist. So we're dealing with, we're in an advanced stage of a process where the capacities for learning are being taken away from things like your paperback, you know, mass paperback of Sartre's Being and Nothingness, okay, sold 10 trillion copies in the 1950s. And what you are is there are these machines which feed you things that have been designed by other people who may well have the capacity to analyze and understand. So there's a very big danger for individuals in terms of not feeding your own mind, not developing your own mind. But there's also a very serious political problem, which is that some people may have the capacity to learn and everyone else will have to use the machines. And that's very, very dangerous and very hostile to the kinds of political values that we've had for a long time. So I don't know. I don't, what I'm saying is in some ways about the rhetoric of the moment, which I think the more clear and strident we are, the better it is, and the more insistent we are. And the more, you know, if I'm Kelly, you know, and this is the kind of thing I do, and it's very painful and it doesn't always work, and it takes a lot of emotional energy, but you go into the administrator and you say, darn it, you like, listen to me, like, this is how things work. Like, this is the way things are. If you do this, the following will happen. And if you do this, the following will happen. And you're not being true to the values of your institution. And if there's not some significant pressure to do that, then I think we lose too much at the moment. And I say that not to disparage anyone who uses AI tools or anyone who helps their students use them. I say it just to say that the gravity of the situation is more than that.
I have a question.
Just a quick point for Kelly's support. We, in our AI seminar, heard from a Penn State, the woman who runs writing at Penn State for MBA students. She forbids laptops and iPhones in her classroom. She collects them. She has the full support of the administration. It can be done. The scorched earth policy is taking place, and if you wanted to sleuth it out, Penn State MBA writing program, she does it, you know. So you got some authorities you can bring before the Greenwich, Connecticut Board of Education.
I would also want to build on that. So this whole question of cognitive engagement in education, I wonder if it's really a culture and mindset question, or if there's a means and skills question that goes before that, because myself, I went to university in the United States, so I have some experience of it as well. And there are proven methodologies. So I think, Paul, I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but my experience in American higher education was also like, no screens, flipped classroom. There's just like, there's so much preps, and you're scored on the quality of your contributions during classroom discussions. And there are no screens. You cannot even open a laptop, because it is like the professor holds so much power in a positive way in the classroom and manages the classroom such that you're just super focused and you're cognitively present and working through the problems. And I wonder if you would see that as the solution, because it is a very, from the learning science perspective, that is a sound principle, and it's been at work for decades. And when I think about what it would take to scale that, it's, well, first of all, budget, because that means that classes are a bit smaller, but still 50, 60 people easily. And educator skills to facilitate such classrooms, because it takes really high level, serious skill to be able to teach that. It's not giving a lecture to 300 people. So yeah, I wonder if you would see that as the solution, and because if that is solved, the culture and mindset would follow, because that is the expectation. You want to pass the class, you want to get your diploma. This is what it takes for that to happen.
Yeah, it could work. I'm not sure, because it's not the way that you put it made it sound like it could happen tomorrow. And I'm not sure if that's, like, what you just said makes so much sense, but I'm not sure that it is the way that things are moving at the moment. And part of the problem is, I think, that we're actually, even though AI, these large language models have become available in the last few years, we're at the end of, we're at an advanced stage of a certain kind of decline in learning standards, which extends up to the teachers, as you're saying. So it's not just the students, in many cases, who are fighting to keep their devices in the classroom. It's often the professors who don't have the ability or the capacity, or don't want to rethink the way that they're doing things, who are sticking to things that are not going to work. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but I hope that you're right, that it can be done that way, and that people will see that and take it up. I do think the motivation to learn is more than that. I've been thinking, for some reason, I was thinking about when I was driving to my office for this meeting, just remembering how when I was a kid, like Carl Sagan would be on TV talking about like the billions and billions of stars and planets and galaxies a million miles away. And at least in the US, the culture of thinking that there's a world out there to be learned about, not just to be controlled or manipulated for success or for outcomes or for money or whatever, but like kind of wonder at the kinds of things that can be learned. That's an important piece of the puzzle.
Mhm. I have a million questions to ask Zena, but I'll see if anyone else wants to jump in.
If I can follow up, because now this question about motivation and solving for motivation, I'm thinking out loud here. The question I have in my mind is that if speaking specifically about higher ed, because I think the expectation for K-12 is very different, because this is something that everyone has to go through for obvious reasons, and higher ed is something that is optional. It hasn't been made optional by the labor market expectation of and degree inflation. Essentially, you need to have some sort of degree to be able to even enter the labor market. But I wonder if one of the problems with motivation in higher ed has been that people are going to university without knowing what they're doing there. They don't have any intrinsic motivation. And solving that is very difficult, because you don't have that problem if you go to let's put it, Ivy League university. People, the people that go there, they know very well what they're doing there. I wonder if there's something about that solving motivation for students who don't want to be there is the wrong problem. It's more about, it's the step before. It's about how do we, why are we channeling so many people into higher ed in the first place? Is there a better way to use them, especially right now with AI? The flip side of AI is that it's also making a lot of higher ed obsolete. You probably see in the problems at the entry level, and that also means that the explicit implication that you finish school, you have to go to university to be employable, that is breaking down. Right now, to be honest, I don't see a better alternative and what the current grads are going to do. But there is something about that. Yeah, like it seems that we're solving the wrong problem. And if the expectations are changed in a way so that people are not made to learn, if there are different career paths created, maybe that would be a better solution rather than just sort of how do we make them learn?
Right. Well, I think I might have I don't know whether it's brighter or darker view of the situation than yours. I think that the problem about the motivation to learn is much broader than the higher education. So it's not just at the lower levels in higher education. So, I mean, I think as Kelly alluded to, even Ivy League universities, there are some highly trained, really talented students who love to learn, and they go there and they find the places to learn. But the number of people with quite narrow motivations, very, very narrow motivations, is very high. So you're not getting, so you're not necessarily getting, even in the best places in the US, people who actually really, really care about learning stuff. You're getting people who really, really want to become consultants and make a ton of money, or, work in whatever the highest prestige, highest paying thing is. So there's a kind of flattening of the culture that's gone into a huge variety of directions. And in fact, ironically enough, one of the things I've realized in starting to write about this and think about it is that there's much more appetite for, say, reading great novels, way more appetite, like a little further down the social hierarchy, like working classes, middle classes, like that's where people really still have this spark, because they haven't been completely taken over by this hyper competition that's going on at the high levels. I mean, that's gross generalization, so many exceptions. So I think that it's not just a narrow problem of how do you motivate college students who shouldn't really be there. I think there is a question about what is the point of these institutions that you're pointing to that's essential. Like, what are we really doing? why did we think that these were ever going to be good job training institutions? It's not working, as you're pointing out. The job market's awful, including in fields where people might have gotten degrees in order to get a job. So why were we thinking that that was a good idea? Maybe we should have companies think about picking up the training for their own employees, which is the more old school thing. Or maybe we need other ways of providing training that are not in higher education. But you're still going to need in K through 12 and all the way down and all the way across and all the way up. You need some kind of recovery of some kind of inspiration to think about nature, mathematics, books, literature, political theory, philosophy, the fundamental questions. That's all starvation territory across the board. And I don't think the deepest cultural problems that we have are not going to be solved without that. Without some kind of recovery.
Can I throw
Go
one
Andy.
thing in with that too? In the States, I'm especially worried because right now in public schools, right, big business is teaming up with teachers unions, and they are going to start feeding AI programmatically into public schools starting in kindergarten or earlier. And so I'm just horrified that while I think there's an argument to be made that you can make that AI certainly can be a useful tool in a number of disciplines, maybe not humanities, but nonetheless, only for those who already have developed minds, right? Only for those who know what a tool is and what the purpose of it and so on. It just seems to me we are going to be poisoning, talk about, equity and sort of a democratic approach to education. Now we're poisoning the minds that are the most disadvantaged to begin with. So they're not going to be made to or led to think on their own. They're just going to be fed this stuff from the beginning. And so I'm especially worried about that in the United States.
It's telling, right, that this is the higher ed level, the university systems that have adopted and have announced big partnerships with AI, they're the public institutions. It's like the California State University system. That's the system for the people that can't afford anywhere else. So it's not like Princeton and Harvard are devising, ways for thoughtful people to use AI for their students. It's starting at a different level. And I agree with you. I find it disturbing.
Go Andy.
Yeah, I wanted to share. I was looking at some research recently from the Alan Turing Institute that they did with, I think it was Lego and the Children's Parliament. And they found, I think it was 22% of 8 to 12-year-olds are using ChatGPT or LLMs. And they're using it to generate images and to play and to learn. So yeah, it's definitely here and the kids are using it and it's here to stay. But yeah, attached to that, I was watching a video and they had the kids generating images. And the kids were saying they actually preferred painting pictures. Because just prompting an image, it's almost like Googling it. You haven't created anything yourself. So although painting, that they weren't painting perfect, beautiful pictures, and it was messy, but it was fun. And they actually they enjoyed printing off the pictures that they prompted and then sharing them with each other and kind of playing and working together in that respect. So it's kind of reassuring that young children are using the tool, but also they don't really get anything out of getting it to do the work for them. And yeah, I'm someone that reads a lot and I use AI a lot. So I'm really probing it every day.
Right.
To see what it can do and what it can't. I would say it's not limited to an essay cheating machine, which I think a lot of people tend to focus on, and there's a lot more things that it can do. So I'm not reading less as a result of using it. I'm kind of using it in a complementary way. So yeah, I sometimes read some quite difficult, opaque texts, and I have no idea. And I'm able to, to paste in a chapter and say, what the hell. And you're correct. It does hallucinate. It's made up quotes and sources, so there is that risk. But it is helpful. So I think yes, it's an essay cheating machine. It's also a writing coach, and it can help people structure an essay. It can give them feedback on their writing. So I think it is a bit of a blank canvas, and it can be used for good and bad. Like I say, there's always been the lazy student, the motivated student, and all the people in between, but there's also always been the people that struggle. And maybe their lack of motivation is, I don't know, fear of asking questions in class, no access to someone to help them. And yeah, one good thing about AI is it has limitless patience. It's quite encouraging, which is also a good and a bad thing. It's too encouraging. ChatGPT I'm talking about, if you ask it a question, it'll tell you like, oh my God, you're so clever for even thinking about this, which I think is quite interesting. They need to tweak and fix that. But I think the pragmatic solution is to teach responsible use of AI. So I went to uni quite recently, about 6 years ago as a mature student. And, they taught us you can't just go to Wikipedia. You can't just copy and paste what you find on the internet. This is a good source. This is a bad source. This person has a bee in their bonnet. They're not they're not representing the truth without their own personal opinion clouding that. And yeah, I think someone said it. Teachers should be using AI and probing it in the same way that I have been to understand its limitations, what it's good at, what it's bad at, so they can then share that with their students. So I don't think the best solution is to just completely ban it, but to get it to generate a crappy essay and share that with the students, and share alongside that a good essay, and highlight the difference. So yeah, that's kind of my thought. It's here to stay. We need to embrace it, and it needs to be in the classroom, and we need to teach how to use it responsibly.
I think I'm grateful that you spoke up, because I was just thinking before you started talking, I was thinking this conversation is becoming too one-sided. We need to and I think Zhao was getting a little, he's like, we have to more substantive conversation about the pros and cons. So the thing I just want to add to in response to what you're saying is that there's, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to say it quite clearly, but I'm confident there's something there, that there's a tool, which is, as you say, blank slate, like a hammer. Is it good or bad? There's no answer to that question. It's good if you use it well, it's bad if you use it badly. But it's the structure of certain institutions. And I think it wouldn't surprise me if the problem was particularly acute in the US, because I think our education system has been hauling out for a long time, faster than anything in Europe. But there's an acute danger that the worst aspects of the technology run rampant, and the responsible use is something which gets left by the wayside. So I think that's why I wanted to start by saying, look, this is the mass education university where this happens, right? And also to say, well, look, there are these weird people like me who like to fix their own cars, so to speak. Like that, I like to just do everything all the way the hard way, as far as thinking and learning is concerned. I want to stare at the equation for hours without, you know, until I start to understand, or I want to find a human being to talk to, because I like also intellectual community, I think is quite important. But that's not it. The question that I'm seeing is the question of how to ensure as much as possible that the worst uses are skirted, and that in any case that everyone be reminded of what real learning is like, so that responsible use of it becomes possible. So that's my defense of my extreme sounding position.
Would you say that, and we can do this as an open question as well, because I was listening to you a moment ago, Zena, because I'm more on Andy's side, and maybe this is indeed a US thing where you guys feel this way more than we do. But even though I've worked with some Portuguese high schoolers recently, and they all use ChatGPT, so I feel like maybe there's a connection. But in order to foster true learning, I was thinking about my own example. And I know that I have a very different experience, because when I was in high school, I was lucky enough to have this thing called the professional course in Portugal, where, you know, they tailor the high school experience to a specific skill or craft that you want to develop. And I was able to have that with music. I went to college to study music. And so this idea of you go to college to cheat on essays, to me is completely like, how can I cheat playing the guitar? Makes no sense. I'm not able to, right? And so my experience in a higher educational institution was the complete opposite of what we're mentioning here. No one cared about, like, there's no, even now, like, there's still music, higher education, you can use AI to maybe help you with composing or something, but no one wants to play that, right? So but what I'm saying is that I only started to read philosophy and really enjoy science and history as an adult after I fell in love with music. So there was this very specific thing that unlocked the passion of learning as a teenager. I've always been a very curious person, but maybe I was stuck in a moment, and then I found this one thing that opened the door to everything else. And I was reading like novels because I wanted to have inspiration so I could write songs about it. Because if I was only reading theory, the songs would all suck and sound the same. And so I guess that part of my question is, can we find is a possible solution to the problem of true learning just being disappearing, or the need or the desire to learn? Is it like, do we need to build these new institutions that helps students find things that they love in order to be curious about that very particular thing? And then once they're able to see, like, oh, I really enjoy learning about this, maybe I will enjoy learning about other things as well. Is that part of the solution? And if so, how do we go about building these institutions?
I honestly, I think that when you put things in that perspective, my guess is, not having a God's eye view of either the United States or any other country, or really of my own community even, my guess is that it's still true that most young people learn to love something real that they do. So is it sports? Is it music? Is it art? Is it math? You know, whatever it might be. And I think you're right that even one thing that you know how to do on your own for yourself, that you're developing your own human capacities to do it, and you're doing it on your own, that is a kind of a wedge or a window or an opening into more. That's definitely what I've seen with some young people. I mean, I know a young man who didn't read any books as a kid. Total, like, you know, gamer, like games, like American football, texting with friends, like completely screen dependent. And there's certain things that he really loves to do for his own, and those things have, just as the way that you're describing, opened up other capacities. So I think that can happen on the level of individuals, and I find that encouraging. But as someone who, works in a college and is someone who's called on to talk about education, I have to think about the way that our institutions are structured. And are they, because I know that for a fact, I know from hard, cold experience, this isn't just an idealistic thing, that the way that your school is set up, the littlest things, the way the classroom's set up, the way seats are set up, what kind of furniture's in the room, the way the walls are painted, are all the teachers on the same page, or do they have radically different ideas about what they're doing in the classroom? Like, who are the administrators? Are they supporting the teachers? Are they hostile to the teachers? Who are the parents? Who are the kids? Like, all of these institutional factors determine what goes on. And in maybe the way to put it is something like this. The dangers in communities that are very atomized, where community supports are very weak, where there's very little human interaction anyway. And in the US, that's a notorious, deep, long-standing problem. Like, people are atomized. You go up to Canada, it's different. You go to Mexico, it's different. You go to the UK, it's a little better. Though the UK is most like us. And so anything that provides a substitute for you to interact with a human being is like another nail in the coffin of isolation, right? So, that's why I force myself to call a friend who might know the answer to this question before I, look on a large language model. Because I'm also super privileged, right? I know lots of people who know lots of stuff because I've been an academic for a long time. So, I don't want to take that away from it. Anyway, so I think that education's built into the fabric of everyday life, and whatever's going on there is going to have a huge impact on it. And I do think we should be thinking about institutional design that is best suited for our technology, and how to do that might vary from place to place, but and what's gonna really nurture love of learning? Like, does your community have like nature centers or parks or stuff where you like pick up bugs and starfish or whatever? Like, do people learn that math is not just a means to an end, but something beautiful and fun? Like, do they read real literature in school? So in the US, it's a matter of almost virtually national policy, K through 12, that teaching literature and writing should be specific skill-based, not something that like you learn by reading a really good book. Okay. That's mandated by the federal government in American public schools. That's a very bleak possibility, and that feeds into the same kind of crisis that we're talking about, which I think is why you're hearing this desperation from the Americans, because there's other things that are interacting that are making it much worse.
But do you think that part of this problem with the love of learning, do you think that we'll get there, or we're able to foster that in students again by reshaping current institutions, or by creating new institutions that have a fundamental differently approach to it?
I think that's just a circumstantial question. My hope is still for reform. My hope has always been for reform, because I know very well, because I've been educated by American institutions of higher education, that there's a lot that's going to be lost if they collapse completely. So I'm not rejoicing at the collapse of American higher education institutions, which is ongoing as we speak. There's a lot that's going to be lost. So I hope for reform. But if reform doesn't happen, then yes, it's building new institutions. And the new institutions won't have the same kind of reach. So you end up having something which may, for a time, be countercultural or niche. But that doesn't have to be its permanent place. It can, lots of countercultural niche things become mainstream at some point. So I'm not interested in specific, like, I want to try all tactics. Nothing is ruled out. Just as long as anything that we can get to help people to think more clearly about what learning is for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have two final questions. I want to be very respectful of your time, but I also want to be respectful for everyone else. So if people have questions or comments that you want to jump in, please, this is the moment to do so, because I don't want to.
Actually,
ahead.
yeah, there is something I was thinking about, well, most of the people, it seems, here come from some kind of educational institution, while I don't, and I notice how much of what they were talking about does not really apply to my experience, even though I think AI is still a problem, at least to some degree in my case, but mostly it hasn't been. I teach people informally, and AI almost has not influenced the way they learn at all. They haven't, actually, I have encouraged some of my students to use AI to help them out with some things that might otherwise take my time. For example, well, they learn languages, so it's quite easy to learn or to reinforce certain learning just by chatting with the AI, but just by writing and speaking. So it's very easy. And AI does language quite well in the sense that it doesn't, I have not seen a major mistake in a long time. So it's a pretty good tool, I believe, to use if you're learning, if you want to learn a language. So yeah, it just seems like it mostly is, I think this discussion is probably and is mostly about the way mass education works and not specifically AI, because AI is just another tool. And if people were going to universities and schools just for the sake of learning new things, this wouldn't be a problem at all. It just seems to me. And maybe, I don't know. It's such an interesting discussion and topic to think about, like the reform of the education. And this applies to Ukraine as well, of course. So yeah, it's really interesting. And I think this is the major discussion, not exactly the technology, but how we do things and the motivation of the people that go into these institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that I remember at the beginning you asked this question about how you were wondering about how AI was going to impact your profession. And I think the extent of the impact, I think, does depend on whether the kinds of forces that are at work in mass education, say the American style, come into play. And I think those do, like, so I was talking actually over the weekend with someone who has an app for interpreters and translators. They use human beings and they use them in medical contexts. So someone comes into a hospital in the US and the app puts them in touch with a real human being who speaks the language and who knows medical terminologies that the doctor and the patient can communicate with each other. I know this is like a miracle of technology, right? But also human beings, human capacity. And that's something where you don't want to trust an AI with it, because if there's a mistake, it's catastrophic. But if you have a case where, I mean, language learning in the US is really in a crisis, so there's just much less of it, because the AI shortcuts, whatever their shortcomings, don't matter enough for the uses that are at stake. So people are happy to use the AI tools for languages to communicate in foreign countries or to do very basic kinds of translation. And so I think it's where there's a strong incentive for a shortcut that goes past the human, and that's where the threat comes in. And you know, like I say, again, in my continuing my more narrow perspective in the mass education in the US, like the loss of foreign language learning is bad. I mean, we're already notorious for not learning.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you know, here we are. We're gonna be even worse. You know, and we won't have that experience of like reading a literature in another language, or you know.
This is such a big problem, and this has been a painful experience for me because, well, I have dropped out of two universities because of it, because I didn't want to continue, because I really, really like learning. And it felt like they were just draining my resources doing stuff that really didn't matter, or there were these other students that didn't care. And they really, the biggest annoyances come from other students. I love the things I like about the universities are teachers, and that's it. I don't like the classes. I don't like the structures. I don't like other students. They're just there for, I don't know why. And yeah, it's been just, I just wished in my ideal world, I would just come, there would be just this teacher that I can talk to directly. Of course, this would be super expensive, but this is ideal. Yeah, so yeah, that's quite, and this is a very important conversation. I feel, and I don't have a lot to contribute in that respect, but it's really, really interesting to know, because it's such a mass process. And of course, people who go through universities, they're all around us. They all will go through this at some point, or have already. So yeah.
Thank you, Dasha. I'm still opening to everyone who wants to jump in, because I still have a million questions. So, like, please, if you have something, go ahead.
All right, João, let's hear it.
Okay, so I have one last question that I want to ask you. When I was thinking about the title for this salon, which is what can't be automated, I did that because when I was reading Lost in Thought, one of the things that really struck me was the idea of contemplation as a way to learn, and that was really powerful to me, because I when I was looking back at all of the different things that I've learned, that made my life a better life, or that made me happy and fulfilled, all of them cultivated this sense of wonder, and they came from contemplation. So wonder was the direct result of that. So that really struck me. And when I was thinking about the salon, I was thinking about, well, it doesn't matter how good LLMs get, they cannot contemplate, they cannot replace me contemplating something, right? And so I was wondering, Zena, in your view, and this is slightly going back to like our relationship with learning, because I feel like it's a good way to close it. Besides contemplation, what are some of the things that you feel like AI cannot automate, and that we humans can do, just to foster this sense of enjoyment, wonder, and passion around learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's truthfully a question that anyone in the salon could answer, right? We could all think about it's the kind of question I would ask my students. I'd be like, what do you guys think? What can't be automated? And I would learn something from what they said. I mean, one of the things I think that's most obvious is connection between human beings can't be automated. We can use technology as a tool. We are right now using Zoom as a tool to talk to people all over the world. Okay. But I'm a real person. Each of you are real people, and we're having a conversation. We can see each other's faces for the most part. This is real. So now we make choices, it seems to me, about which interactions matter most, right? So as you were saying, like, you don't care about taking your car to the mechanic. Now, would you care? Now, I'm friends with my mechanic, but suppose I didn't care and it was easier and convenient and just as good to take it to like a robot mechanic. Maybe that'd be fine. It'd be a choice I can make. Romantic, I think the use of AI in romantic situations is quite scary. I find that to be a disturbing development, that people would use computers for to delve into their most intimate forms of relating. I don't know. What do you guys think? What can't be?
Therapy. There's a great New Yorker article on this very thing. Can therapy be automated if you have a friendly listener that is a bot? And if you're in a really severe situation, the author of the article is saying, well, maybe it is the only alternative, a very lonesome, elderly, incapacitated person. But you wouldn't want your 18-year-old turning to a robot for intimate conversation, you know? So again, judgment calls, right? But ultimately, I don't think good therapy could probably be done. Although I've done experiments where some people prefer the robot, at least at first. And then they say, well, I'm going back to my therapist.
How about everyone else? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you, Jenny. You're muted.
Sorry. I was just kind of thinking out loud, but I'll ask a question. Just kind of, comparing a good AI to maybe a not so good human in various contexts, because there's humans of different skill levels, whether it's teaching or therapy or whatever it is. And I think it's just kind of an interesting question of, are there times that AI might actually be preferable to some kind of like bad human connection, whether it's some kind of like undue influence or lack of skill, et cetera.
Right. So you can easily think of cases where that might be the case. So like, okay, so the third grade math tutor who's toxic or abusive might be worse than the AI third grade math tutor. There are also cases, though, this gets maybe to the heart of Josh's question, where a human presence really matters. Like, so I don't know, I like this custom, right? If someone's very ill or dying, someone's with them all the time, right? They don't say things, they don't have to do things. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they're there. And if someone were to say, oh, don't worry about your aunt who's so sick, like there's a robot in the room who will every now and then say something soothing. That to me wouldn't feel like that was the right thing.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about replacing, I'm talking about augmenting.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, oh
no,
yeah.
I was just letting scenarios play out. That wasn't a criticism of what you said. I was just thinking through different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. I'm kind of the mind that not replace, but maybe augment. Yeah.
I think the most important thing about us versus robots. By the way, we haven't talked about how AI might affect employment of people. So it's one of the biggest concerns. But yeah, I think that us humans, we have our physicality. I think that's our advantage. I mean, maybe when AI gets better and maybe can replace some, I don't know, bad tutors, bad therapists, maybe then, I mean, our physical presence will still be something that we can hold on to.
So I want to be respectful of everyone's time, especially Zena. So we have one last minute, and so I wanted to thank you all for being here, of course, and I wanted to thank Zena for taking the time to do this and taking the questions so gracefully and making us wonder about a series of different things. And I also wanted to do some closing thoughts to everyone. So. I mean, Zena, I'll end it over for maybe first to everyone else, and then you can close us off with some of your closing remarks. So this is the moment for you to share your feedback, or ask one final question, or maybe even make one last comment before we wrap it up. So Paul, I see you unmuted.
Oh, okay.
So
I'll just say
ahead.
thank you. Honestly, Zena, every time I read you, I think more, better, I think, and when I hear you. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I also wanted to say something. Well, I came here because I wanted to connect with humans. So instead of chatting to I came here, and now I can see all of you, and hopefully none of you is somebody else, under the guise of AI, or maybe AI. Actually, I was thinking about how easy it is now to, I don't know, to especially online, to pass yourself as a human. So this I think shows that human connection is still important, and not just talking to AI, even though I talk to AI, of course, and it does help me sometimes. I still think I have a positive outlook, even though, of course, might be a very difficult time for many people because of it. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for this engaging conversation. It made me think a lot, and I had some notes, and now I feel much better.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dasha.
I think my takeaway from tonight is that AI is disrupting education. And I think that's maybe a force for good if it's making everyone question how we do things. Yeah.
I think we need to shut it all down for a whole year, redesign it, and then come back.
Thank you, Alden. Anyone else? Zena, do you want to close us off with some last comments before we go?
I was going to, after what Dasha said, I thought I might thank you for trusting that I'm not just an AI mock-up. This would be a big scandal to the Zena Hitz brand if I was actually just running a robot trained on the things I've written and said. So thanks for trusting that this is a real human being. Zhao, you probably have something to say.
I do. I wanted to thank you once again to all of you. This was wonderful. I really enjoy hosting. I really enjoy conversation with people. I am one of those people that, even though I do believe AI may be a forces thing, it will never replace this kind of conversation. And I'm so lucky that I'm just from like a guy from Portugal talking with all of you all over the world and interviewing and talking with someone that has really had a positive impact in my life. Zena, like Lost in Thought, really was a book that had a profound impact on my life when I read it. So I just wanted to thank all of you for such an interesting questions, for being so respectful. This is one of the things I really love about hosting events with Interintellect, is that there's always this kind of culture of mutual respect and curiosity, which is also something that I feel like AI won't be able to replace us on. That being said, thank you so much for taking the time, and make sure that you go and follow Interintellect on social media and see if there's any other event that you want to be part of. And of course, go and follow Zena, buy her books, and do all of these different things that you can do to support her. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great day and a great evening. Okay, this was lovely. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.